Hello everybody and welcome to the analysis of the first game of the World Chess Championship 2016 between reigning champion Magnus Carlsen and challenger Sergei Karjakin. So there was a lot of build-up, a lot of attention on the first game, and Carlsen with the white pieces. Would he be able to put pressure right from the start on the challenger? We're going to find out in a moment. So let's switch over here and take a look at the game. The match is being held in New York. Here you have the dates. Started today, November 11th, and is going till the 30th. Up to 12 games. First player who reaches 6.5 points wins the match. Today, Carlsen starting the match with the white pieces, and he started out with d4. That was one of the big questions. What would be the first move? And he's going for d4. But the big surprise actually followed in the second move when Carlsen played bishop to g5, the Trompowsky attack. Obviously the main moves here are knight f3 and c4. And by choosing bishop g5, Carlsen's already making clear, I'm not going into a theoretical discussion here. I want to explore some sidelines and get you out of your preparation as soon as possible. In the past, Carlsen has also played, for example, the London system here, bishop f4 as well, and we might see this later in the match, even though I'm sure Karjakin has prepared for this extensively as well. Now, black has many ways to respond to the Trompowsky, e6, c5, or what Karjakin does here, the most solid way is to play d5. Now e3. And once again, many choices for black, but Karjakin plays very principled chess. Goes c5, playing in the center. And now bishop takes f6. White is giving up the bishop to create a slight weakness in the black position, creating double pawns, but really those two balance each other out. Black now has the bishop pair, on the other hand has this slight weakness of those two pawns being doubled. And now d takes c5. White wins a pawn for a moment, but really it's just a matter of time until black will regain this pawn. And in fact, so far we're following a game Carlsen has played in 2013 against Vladimir Kramnik. Kramnik decided to go e6 here. But knight c6, what Karjakin chooses, is just as fine. Black is in no rush to go e6 and first decides to develop the knight. Bishop b5, pinning the knight. Now black simply goes e6 and wants to pick up, wants to regain the pawn on c5. You can also see black has a very nice center right now, center control. And that's exactly why Carlsen decides to attack the center by going c4 here. Now, black doesn't want to take on c5 now. That would allow white to take on d5. And now the whole black pawn structure would be crippled. You can see all these pawns are isolated. In general, in chess, you want to keep your pawns together so they can protect each other. Now all these pawns, they're lonely islands and they cannot protect each other, and that's a problem because that means you need pieces to protect them, and pieces usually want to have more active roles in chess than to defend pawns. So Karjakin decides to take on c4, offering the trade of queens, which Carlsen declines. He plays knight e2, and that's a good decision because in this endgame only black can be better. say bishop takes c4, bishop takes c5. Now, in the endgame, this advantage of the bishop pair will tell much more, and this weakness really is not of any importance. These double pawns might even give black some chance here with the half-open g-file. So here it's just black playing for an advantage, really. So Carlsen decides to go knight d2, and now just bishop takes c5. In fact, now black's up a pawn, right? But of course, the pawn on c4 is a lost child. It's just a matter of time until white will pick this one up. But Carlsen's not in a hurry. He develops a knight and castles. And now Karjakin says, okay, well, if you don't take on c4 yet, let me make it a little bit more difficult for you. And the point is here, now white really doesn't want to take with the bishop, first of all, because then black would get another bishop. And now has the bishop pair against the two knights, so that would be pretty nice for black. Nice little advantage. And if knight takes c4, well, then again, black could just trade queens and is also in has no worries whatsoever. So Carlsen goes rook c1. And by the way, in case you're wondering, black castled here short. Isn't his king kind of open with these pawns? Well, a little bit, but it really doesn't matter here because white is not able to create any attack against the black king. Far, far from being able to create anything. So the king feels rather safe, and if black really gets worried, the king can also sidestep and let the rook go to g-file, so no problems here. Now Karjakin chooses to withdraw the bishop from the c-file, just prophylactically, moving away the bishop already. Now queen c2, once again knight takes c4. Well, it is possible, but black can go a6 here. And this forced the queen exchange, because if bishop a4, then there might be some ideas with b5 or knight takes c4 followed by b5, which would be unpleasant for white. So white would need to take and then play knight d6 here, counterattack on this bishop. But just bishop e7, and we just reached complete equality here. No problems for black whatsoever. So Carlsen goes queen c2, still taking his time to take on c4. And Karjakin concludes his development, plays bishop d7 now. Of course, this is splitting the bishop here. Now black doesn't have this advantage anymore. He has exchanged one of his bishops, but on the other hand, he has finished his development, and that was his primary goal here. Carlsen still doesn't take on c4. He plays queen c3, attacking the knight on a5, and also introducing his idea of maybe going knight e4. And Karjakin was like, well, I don't want to see any of this knight e4 business. Let me just centralize my queen, playing queen d5, defend this knight, and also cover e4, and really pretty much force white to take on c4 now. Because otherwise black might just defend it with rook a8, and then at some point it might become too late for white to take. So now Carlsen took, and we see major exchanges here. All the queens come off the board, and now also the rooks come off the board. Here rook fc8, sometimes it's the question which rook to pick. Here it makes sense to pick this rook, so the king can come closer to the center, which makes a lot of sense in the endgame. Now it doesn't really matter much, because here the other rook goes to d8. Now watch out, a little checkmate threat on d1. So white plays g3 to give his king some space. Now, let me move this back. And now rook d7. Rook d7 covering the 7th rank, so the rook cannot invade there. King f1. And now f5. So what can be said in general about this endgame? Maybe let's do a quick overview. So I would say most tournaments people would have already agreed to a draw in this position, especially on this level. Black still has these double pawns on f7 and f5, but it really doesn't matter much because once again they're not isolated. They are protecting each other and they're not really weak. Also, black has a nice bishop which he's placing on f6 and which can, well, restrict the white knight easily. So Carlsen just wanted to play some more moves. I think he just wanted to see what is going to happen and not give away this white game too early. So you play king e2, bishop f6. Now bishop is just perfectly placed here on this diagonal. You see there's this 2 square distance between knight and bishop, and they're kind of neutralizing each other. The bishop is taking squares away from the knight and vice versa. Now b3, the bishop was attacking this pawn. King f8, king is coming closer to the center. And both sides are just trying to improve the position, but really not much is changing here. h3, hinting at the possibility of going g4 at some point, which doesn't really change much, but it is a possibility. h6, honestly, I don't know if this move was necessary, but it also doesn't hurt. Just in case white goes g4, then black has already stopped any g5. But Carlsen didn't go g4, he went knight e1, trying to regroup the knight, aiming to go to d3, which is happening right here, king d8. King d8 now introducing the idea of exchanging rooks, which would simplify things further, since white cannot play for much in the minor piece endgame. And now f4. After looking at the game a little bit, well, it doesn't change much, but I think g4 might have been a better way to play for something, even though, let's be completely clear here, I would be absolutely certain that Karjakin would draw this as well. But it just seems to me that here, maybe if rook c7, keep the rooks on the board, and then go e4, maybe go e5, maybe you can try something more. But anyways, like I said, it wouldn't change much. So Carlsen plays f4. Probably trying to go g4 in the next move. I'm not quite sure what his intentions were with this move. And it's a little bit against this rule of thumb. Don't place the pawns on, or don't fix your pawns on the color of your opponent's bishop. So in that case, white is fixing the pawn on a dark square, and this bishop is a dark squared bishop. And the reason why for this rule of thumb, just to explain it, well, in the future, obviously, this bishop could attack this pawn, or maybe another pawn like this one, e3, because on a dark square. Vice versa, if you put it on a light square, the bishop can never attack it, obviously, because it cannot switch color. So I'm not sure what Carlsen really was going for here. Karjakin just goes h4, h5, stopping g4 altogether. And this also makes sense to now play h5. And that he waited until white went f4, because let's say if he went h5 here, now this pawn could be a weakness. Now white could fix his pawn like this and then have this idea to go knight f4 and attack the pawn. So that's why Karjakin didn't play it earlier, but played it in this position when white obviously can never go knight f4 again, well, unless some major exchanges follow. Now a4. Carlsen's trying to expand a little bit on the queen side, wants to go b4 and b5, and Karjakin spots this and goes rook d5, so he can meet b4 with b5. Instead, Carlsen played knight c5. Yeah, b4, just b5, exchanging another pair of pawns, and of course with every exchange like that, black is getting closer and closer to the draw. So Carlsen goes knight c5, threatening knight takes b7, and black goes b6, attacking the knight, and knight a6. You might wonder, where's this knight going? Well, now there's the threat of knight b4 hitting both the rook and aiming to go to c6. And again, Karjakin finds a very simple way to deal with this. He plays bishop e7, and if now white was to go knight b4, then black would just swap off the minor piece and the rook in game. We don't have to look at that at all anymore. It's just completely draw. So to keep playing, Carlsen went knight b8 instead. Knight is going on interesting routes here. Once again with the idea of going knight c6. And here black had to be a little bit precise. Knight c6 is the threat and picking up the pawn a7, so a5. And once again this goes against this rule of thumb. What we said about white not placing the pawns on the same color as your opponent. Same is true for black here, not putting the pawns on the same color as well, because, well, you would want the pawns to complement the bishop. But in this case, it doesn't really matter. White has no way to make use of that, to exploit the light squares in any way. So knight c6 check. Here, last critical moment maybe in the game, well, not really critical, but one opportunity for black to make a mistake. If you went for d7, then white would go knight e5 check and would be able to now intrude with the rook and get some active play here. So that would be better for white, but of course Karjakin did not play king e7 but just went king e8, so he doesn't run into his check, and now is simply able to stop any rook advance here by blocking the c-file with the bishop. Now rook c3, king e7, and there's just no way for white to make any progress here. Black has kind of built a fortress here, no pawn breaks, and Carlsen now decides to exchange rooks, but the minor piece endgame is also just completely drawish. Knight c6, king d6, now Karjakin goes to d5, and we simply see a move repetition here, because neither side can make any progress here. It is just a draw. So the first game ends in a draw. Karjakin effortlessly holds the draw of the black pieces, completely neutralizes Carlsen's opening strategy. The Trompovsky didn't prove to be a really effective weapon in the first game. Well, Karjakin will be happy, and tomorrow he will have the white pieces, and we'll see if he can maybe put some more pressure on his opponent than the world champion was able to do today. I hope you guys enjoyed the analysis, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Goodbye.